Call It Courage, Chapter 4, pages 76 through 86. Now the adze was complete. Thus the canoe too was beginning to take finished shape. It was 15 feet long, 3 feet deep, and scarcely a foot wide. Often as he worked, the boy would pause to stand off and admire his craft. It was a beautiful canoe. How proud his father would be! Alas, that it was such slow work. When the hull had been hollowed out, it must be smoothed off with the adze and caulked with artu gum. Then a mast must be made of the pukuti, straight and true, and a sail woven from pandanus. And there was rigging to be made of sennit, tough and strong as wire. The craft would have been finished sooner if only there were not so many things to interfere. Every day, for example, Mafatu climbed the plateau to his lookout. He had not missed one day since he arrived at the island. He knew that when the eaters of men came, they would sail by day. They would have to beat against the prevailing wind. It would take them many hours to come from Smoking Island. Mafatu would be able to see them from his lookout long before they arrived. If only he could be ready before they came! He must! But that trip up the mountain every day took so much precious time. His canoe would have been finished days ago but for that. Today, I will not go, the boy thought as his adze whirred and chipped. It takes too long. Please stop here and answer question 1. Then he sighed and laid down the adze. Caution was the better part of wisdom. He picked up his shining spear with its new shaft and turned toward the trail that led to the high plateau. Yuri leapt around, his nose keen-pointed to the ground. This day, as Mafatu climbed the rough trail through the jungle, he was preoccupied, lost in his thoughts. His mind was not in this business at all. He was thinking about the rigging of his canoe, planning how he could strengthen it here, tighten it there. Some instinct of danger must have made him pause, warning him to beware. There it was, just a rustle in the undergrowth, scarcely louder than an insect's hum. The boy drew up tense and listening. Yuri had dashed off on some wild goose chase of his own. The boy stood rooted, alert. Then he saw it, a wild boar with lowered head, eyes red with hate, the flash of its wicked tusks. The animal pawed the ground suddenly. Its grunting snort broke the stillness. Mafatu knew a blind impulse to turn and run. Then he drew a deep breath and shouted out a challenge. "Pu-ai Viri, wild pig! I, Mafatu, have come to kill you!" The boar charged. Over the ground it tore. Foam flew back from its tusks. The boy braced himself. He met the charge with a perfectly timed thrust of the spear. The boar impaled itself, shoulder deep, upon the spearhead. Please stop here and answer question 2. Mafatu was thrown off balance, sent spinning headlong. Over and over he rolled. He leapt to his feet in a panic, defenseless. But the boar toppled, gave a convulsive shudder, lay still. Mafatu was struck dumb. He had killed a wild pig. For a second he could not grasp the wonderful truth of it. Then he leapt wildly into the air, shouting, "Awee, tee-awee, I have killed a puau. Do you hear me, Tavandanui? I, your son, have killed a boar. Ho, ha!" Yuri came leaping out of the jungle and barked himself hoarse at the sight of the pig. "A fine one you are," Mafatu joked to his dog. "Where were you when I needed you? Off chasing butterflies, that's you. Was it for this I saved you from the teeth and the meow? I have a mind not to give you one mouthful of puau." Yuri hung his head and dropped his tail, then brightened as Mafatu laughed joyously. "Foolish one. Here, drag your share." The boy made a rude sled of bamboo and loaded the heavy animal onto it. Then he hitched a stout liana about Yuri's neck and the dog threw his weight into the task. The two started home in triumph with their burden, Mafatu singing at the top of his lungs a lusty song of blood and battle. He was all Polynesian now, charged with the ancient fierceness of his race. Victory coursed like fire through his veins. There was nothing he would not have dared, nothing he feared. Aye, but life was good. Please stop here and answer question 3. When they reached the campsite, Mafatu built a roaring fire and set a pile of stones to heat. While the stones were heating, the boy cleaned the pig at the water's edge, then stuffed its empty belly with succulent tea leaves and red bananas. When at last the oven stones were white and smoking, Mafatu dragged the pig back to the fire and rolled it upon the hot umu. Then he covered it with layer upon layer of plantain leaves, dozens of them, to hold in the steam and to allow the pork to cook through slowly. Yuri leaped about, sniffing at the delicious odors, barking his delight. Pork! After weeks of fish and fish and fish, how good would it taste? Besides, fish was not good for dogs. Too many bones. Kiwi, no meat eater, looked on calmly, wondering what all this disturbance was about. The bird was content with a coconut that Mafatu split open for him, that he might join in the feast. Please stop here and answer question 4. Mafatu's mouth fairly watered in anticipation, but even as he settled back to wait the feast, his hands were busy. The sun gleamed brightly on the curving tusks that already he was making into a necklace. They formed almost a complete circle and were as white as bleached coral. Oh wee! How men's tongues would chatter when they saw this fine necklace. Even grandfathers had been no finer. A strange picture on that lonely beach under the palms. A pig roasting on a fire, a boy lean and brown and whip-strong making a boar's tooth necklace, a prancing yellow dog, a calm, wide-winged albatross pecking at a coconut. Mafatu slipped the necklace about his throat, and he could fairly feel its magic charging him with strength. He pulled the oven stones away from the umu, and there lay the pig, golden, glowing, done to a turn. Rich juices ran in little rivulets down its side, and as Mafatu ate, one thought alone filled his mind, and overshadowing even his enjoyment of the rare feast. Soon now, he would be ready. He had killed the Maao, and the Puao too. His canoe would soon be completed, and then he would return to Hikaru. The canoe was finished. Mafatu lashed the tough Puao outrigger into place with hands that trembled. The woven sail was complete and ready, the rigging strong as wire. There. It was all over. The boy could hardly wait to get his craft into water. Placing logs under the curving stem, he gave a shove and a push. The canoe stirred, moved forward, quick with life. Another shove and the craft slid into the lagoon, and there it floated lightly, easily, as a gull poised for flight. Mafatu stood back and surveyed it with shining eyes. He could hardly believe that all these weeks of labor were at an end. Suddenly he was quiet. With lifted head he offered up the prayer with which all ships were launched at Hikaru. Tauroa, mighty one, my thanks to you in this task completed. Guide it on your back to safe harbor. Tauroa, eh? The boy leaped into the stern, picking up the paddle, and ran up the sail. Yuri sprang into the bow, yelping for very joy. Kiwi sailed far overhead on widespread wings. The breeze caught the sail, swelled it to a golden curve. The outrigger leaned at a sharp angle and sped ahead toward the distant reef. Spray flew back from the prow, and Mafatu's heart beat high. He let out the sheet, wrapped the sennit rope around his foot, and gripped the steering paddle with both hands. He was filled with pride in his canoe. Never had he been as happy as in this moment. Please stop here and answer question 5. Out toward the black reef, closer and closer the canoe skimmed on the wide arc of speed. It was late afternoon and the sun was setting in a blaze of glory, but the boy was reluctant to turn back. He knew that he should have climbed to the lookout that morning. This was the first day he had neglected that duty, but the temptation to complete his canoe had been too great. Tomorrow at daybreak he would climb the plateau for the last time, and then Hikaru. As the little craft skimmed out toward the barrier reef, the thunder of the surf increased in volume to an overwhelming sound. Waves, born far south in the Antarctic ice fields, the home of all waves, broke their backs upon this coral rampart. Gathering far out, they charged the reef, seahorses with flinging manes of foam. The surf shot skyward above its mist. Seagulls swooped and darted. The reef thunder no longer filled Mafatu with unease. He had lived too close to it these past weeks. Out here, half a mile from shore, detached from all security of the land, he had come to believe that, at last, he had established a truth with Moana, the sea god, his skill against the ocean's might. Please stop here and answer question 6. The boy skirted along the edge of the reef, lowered his sail, and dropped overboard the lump of coral which served as anchor. Then he took out his fish line and baited the hook with a piece of crab meat. He wanted to enjoy to the full this new sensation of confidence in himself, this freedom from the sea's threat. He looked back at the land fondly, but without longing. The high peak, purple in the waning light, stood somber against the sky. The valleys were shadowed with mystery. All these weeks he had lived close to this island and been grateful for its bounty, but he had been born on an atoll, a lone island, and all his life had been spent in the spaciousness of open sea and wind-swept palms. There was something gloomy and oppressive in this high island. The reef. This was part of his heritage. The sea, at last, was as much his element as the land. Please stop here and answer question 7. The realization flooded through him in a warm tide of content. He lowered his fish line, fastened it to the mid-thwart, and looked deep down into the clear water. He saw a scarlet rock cod materialize, hang in the shadow of the canoe, motionless save for the slight movement of its gills. With a sudden flip of its tail, it vanished. How fantastic was that undersea world! The boy saw branching staghorn corals as large as trees, through which jellyfishes floated like a film of fog. He saw shoals of tiny mullet, miniature arrowheads, the whole school scarcely larger than a child's hand. A conger eel drew its ugly head back within a shadowy cavern. Please stop here and answer question 8.